thank you for being here for this very important conversation. My name is Paul Finnegan. I am the co-CEO of Madison Dearborn Partners, and I serve on the boards of Advance Illinois and Teach for America. I want to issue a few thank yous. First of all, to the host committee, the GE Foundation, and special thanks to GE for hosting us in this wonderful space. State Farm, the Illinois Business Roundtable, the Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce, United Way, Advance Illinois, the Real Learning for Real Life Common Core Illinois campaign, and Stand for Children Illinois. I also wanted to acknowledge the legislators who were in attendance, particularly since they're not being paid at the present time. Those folks would be Senator Staines, Biss, Bush, Rezin, and Althoff, Representatives Negritz, Burchard, Morrison, and we're also very pleased to have State Superintendent Chris Koch with us, Julie Smith of the Office of Governor Quinn, and Barbara Byrd-Bennet, the CEO of Chicago Public Schools. Let me make just a few framing comments for today's event as we explore what is on the horizon for education in Illinois. In particular, the college and career-ready learning standards in math and English language arts. Many of you are employers and understand that a skilled and well-trained workforce is the strongest asset of any business. It is also critical to the health of our communities and our state. So how are we doing? Despite the dire financial news we read every day, Illinois has the 5th largest GDP in the United States. 32 Illinois companies are ranked in the Fortune 500, and more than 440 corporate R&D facilities are housed here. With more than 200 academic, government, and non-for-profit research groups, Illinois has one of the strongest concentration of research institutions in the United States. No doubt, our highly skilled workforce has played a key role in our state's success in recent decades. Yet total employment in Illinois did not grow from 2003 to 2013. Even though our state's unemployment rate remains too high, in 2010, 140,000 jobs remain unfilled in Illinois. 8 out of 10 Illinois employers say they need employees with some post-secondary education. With the growing complexity of the world and the increasing demands of the 21st century workforce, it is critical that all Illinois students graduate from high school fully prepared for college and careers. Yet in our state today, only 29%, that's 29%, persist through post-secondary graduation at a 2- or 4-year institution. And the rate of students requiring costly, time-consuming remedial classes is estimated as high as 50% in our community colleges. The jobs of tomorrow will require education beyond high school. By 2018, it is projected that the U.S. economy will create 46.8 million openings. Nearly 2/3 of these jobs will require workers with at least some post-secondary education. So what is the solution to the mismatch between skills and employment opportunities? Educating our children so that they are ready for what comes next. Much goes into doing that well, including recruiting and developing outstanding teachers and principals, and providing schools and students with the resources and the support they need. And key to this process is having strong, meaningful college and career-ready learning standards to guide instructions. We're here today to talk more about the new Common Core learning standards, which represent not just a tweak to existing standards, but a more dramatic rethinking of what our children need to know, and know well, to be successful. To get us started, please welcome the CEO of the Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce, Theresa Mintle.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for your patience. And thank you, Paul, for that introduction. I'm here today as the President and CEO of the Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce, the region's voice for business and a strong advocate for education reforms and the Common Core state standards. Prior to this position, some of you may know, I was Mayor Emanuel's Chief of Staff, where I learned firsthand about his passion and personal dedication to our children, their education, and their futures. The Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce, now that I'm on this side, endorses high expectations, standards, and accountability for itself, its members, our elected leaders, and especially our children and their teachers. High expectations and standards are what made America what it is today. Without the same high level of expectations in today's classroom and educational system, we do our children and our collective future a disservice. That is why the Chicagoland Chamber opposes legislation that delays or diminishes continuation of the statewide annual assessment system aligned to rigorous academic and technology standards, including the process of review and acceptance of the Common Core state standards across all disciplines, math and English language arts, but also science and other academic disciplines. As with any significant movement for change, the Common Core state standards have had an important national champion. That national champion is Bob Corcoran and the GE Foundation. Bob is president of the GE Foundation, and under his leadership, the GE Foundation has taken a leadership role in the implementation of the Common Core state standards at the local, state, and federal levels, sponsoring training programs and materials for over 10,000 educators and advocating support for the public and private sectors. The foundation has funded the development of training institutes to help educators develop instructional strategies and materials to help meet the new standards, an extensive online warehouse offering free resources for teachers and materials to help parents better understand the Common Core and new assessments. Since 2005, the GE Foundation has committed nearly $250 million through its Developing Futures in Education program to improve student achievement in 7 targeted U.S. school districts. Think about that for a minute, everybody. $250 million to this initiative. That's pretty impressive. The school districts that have gotten these targeted resources include Louisville, Kentucky, Stamford, Connecticut, Cincinnati, Ohio, Erie, Pennsylvania, Atlanta, Georgia, New York, and close to home for us here, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Each district is being prepared for successful implementation of the Common Core state standards. The learnings from this work have allowed the GE Foundation to expand its work to support best practice sharing, develop training programs, and build management capacity. An incredible investment in this incredibly important investment in our children's future. Bob Corcoran is an executive member of the Business Leaders Initiative on Human Rights and helped establish standards for human rights practices in business and industry. He helped create GE's principles on human rights to guide the company's operation and supply chain. Bob is a trustee of Sacred Heart University and is on the board of directors of Businesses for Social Responsibility. Please join me in welcoming the General Electric Vice President for Corporate Citizenship and President of the Foundation, Mr. Bob Corcoran.
Thank you very much. Thank you all very much for coming today and allowing us to host this session on the Common Core standards. Theresa, thank you. Paul, thank you very much. We have slides. No business people can talk without PowerPoint. It's just it's a screening mechanism when we're young. What I want to talk about today really is why we should be strongly supportive of these standards. The implementation of them is going to be hard. There'll be questions, there'll be difficulties. Whatever we set out to implement, it won't work as well as we think at the start. That's no reason to quit. That's no reason to back away. This is for the betterment of our children, this is for the betterment of our state and the betterment of our country. I've worked for GE for 35 years. I've worked in 8 different states, 2 different countries, and moved around a lot in the GE Witness Relocation Program. Over that time, my children have always gone to public schools until they went off to college and they soaked me for private school college education. But every place we lived, my children went to public school. I was fortunate. I could afford to live in increasingly nicer neighborhoods, and our first focus whenever we chose to find a home was what communities had the best school system where we could afford a home. That was the absolute #1 priority for my wife and I. My wife's parents are immigrants from Portugal, and my grandparents came over to this country from Ireland with $5 in their pockets. That's it. So when we look at education, when GE Foundation looks at education, and we should look at a public education, it is about a level playing field for Americans who use the public system. It's quite simple. And it's an economic issue for us long term. It's not simply a nice thing to do. Let me show you a couple of charts. Why did we get here, or how did we get here? The United States is falling behind, has fallen behind in educational attainment. It's really simple, and it's true. In math, we are 25th, and in science, 17th, against the 34 top industrial countries in the world, the OECD countries. So you look at Japan, Germany, France, Japan. That's awful. In 2009, we were 21st in the world with regard to high school graduation rates. That is disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. When I went to school, and when a lot of folks with hair my color went to school, and as recent as 30 years ago, we were #1 in the world in high school graduates. We were #1 in the world in college graduates proportional to our population. This is a crisis. So the issue here is, how do you solve it? Look at the data. Of 100 students that start 9th grade, it says 78 graduate high school. Those are the most recent data. I believe the data is wrong. Some of it seems to indicate it's closer to 70% that graduate high school. How can you have an economy, a strong economy in society, when only 70% of your people have a high school degree? In 1964, almost 90% of the jobs in the United States required a high school graduation or less to perform. 50 years later, 41% require high school or less. Of those jobs, 2/3 of those jobs pay less than $25,000 a year. So our system is not graduating the kinds of people we need, so the business people in the room understand that. The supply chain for talent and people is not there. But worse than that, when our kids do go to college, 50% of them need remedial classes. To put it in really simple ways, for rich fat cats, what do we care? We got lots of money. They want to take 5 years to graduate, 6 years to graduate, fine, sure, just pay the money, who cares? That's the top tiny percent. For kids who go on scholarship, or kids of middle-class families whose parents saved and worked hard and took loans, or are taking loans and taking Pell Grants or whatever else you can get, it means that your plan for 4 years of education for your child, which may cost you as much as $200,000 for their education for 4 years of school, you now have to pay 5 years, because in many cases students are taking a year of non-credit bearing college courses in order to qualify for the higher level courses they need to graduate. It means they're paying, parents and others are paying $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, what should be a warranty cost for high school. If General Electric made refrigerators, and 50% of them within the first year after we shipped them out, the motors had to be replaced, and it was all your cost. GE's got nothing to do with that. There's no warranty. You bought it, you own it, you replaced the motor. Well, first, you wouldn't buy another GE refrigerator. But second, we would never survive as a corporation, ever. So how can we accept this situation? And it's not about bad teachers. It's not. Teachers get up every day and go in to do their best. We've got phenomenal teachers in this country. It's about a system that's broken. So let me give you a view of how we got here. This is from a study, Trends in International Math and Science, a TIMS study done by a professor out of Michigan State. These are studies that have been done over 20 years. His name is Bill Schmidt. I purposely made this really tiny so you couldn't read it, but here's what it is. If you look at the columns, so you've got 8 columns there, it's grades 1 through 8. So it's first 8 grades of elementary school. If you look at the rows coming down, this is for math. So it goes from simple mathematical concepts down to more complex ones on the bottom. So at the top would be the concept of whole numbers. So I love to watch early school or early grade teachers because it's so simple. They take an orange. Think of this as an orange. This is an orange. That's one orange. That's a whole orange. So as you talk about it, how you teach, it's the concept of a whole thing. It's a complete number. As you move down, you talk about addition and subtraction. One orange plus another orange is 2 plus 3. So it's that simple concept. Then you go down farther. You've got subtraction, you've got multiplication, then you get into fractions. When you get down towards the bottom, you're looking at things that are really pre-algebra formulas, and you start to look at things that are much more complex. So that's how it's laid out. This is how the top performing countries in the world, Japan, the Netherlands, Germany, how they approach teaching math or standards on math. So it shows you that in the early grades you introduce concepts, you teach them for a few years till students master them, and then you stop teaching them. You introduce another concept that builds on top of the mastery of the simple concepts, and as students learn that over a couple of years or the time period, then you introduce even more complex. In fact, in Japan, by the 8th grade, the only thing they're teaching in Japan is algebra. So that's the top performing countries. This is a sample state. This is 2008 data. This is one sample state in America. It's not Illinois, that I know of anyway. Your eyes aren't deceiving you. This is what many people refer to as standards and teaching that are a mile wide and an inch deep. What we do is, you look at that, we teach algebraic equations or that concept and fractions to first graders. And we teach the concept of whole numbers and addition to 8th graders. Now, this is a PhD academic who did the study. It's really good. There's all sorts of data. You can go into it, and that's cool. You probably won't understand it like I didn't necessarily because I'm not an economist. I'm not a PhD statistician. But the conclusions are very, very clear. What was made clear to me was when my kids, I have 2, Ian and Nina. They're now in college. When my daughter was in 3rd grade and my son was in 6th grade, they'd still talk to us at the dinner table, and we sat around and we'd say, how was your day, and all that sort of stuff. My son is an engineer, loves math, always has. The rest of educational stuff, not so much. Never really interested in history, not really interested in English and reading and all that stuff. My daughter is creative, unbelievably creative. Drawing and acting. She wrote 36-chapter book when she was in the 3rd grade. Creative. She's at Emerson College in Boston. If it leaned any farther left, it would be horizontal. So, and her brother is an engineer's engineer. Just the facts, give me the data. Simple. We're sitting at the dinner table. So I asked my son, so Ian, how was school today? Did you learn anything? He said, well, the teacher introduced some new stuff in math, and I'm not sure I don't understand it. And so I said, well, what is it? He started to explain it. This was 6th grade, and we all know we are not smarter than a 5th grader, so 6 was way out of my reach in terms of the practical application at that point to help him. So my daughter, who'd been leaning on the table and just kind of doodling on something, she looked up and she said, oh, that's easy. You take this number, you multiply it by this, then you do this, then you do that, then you put this back together. My wife and I almost had a stroke trying to contain that because she's really hidden her mathematical savantness from us for a while, apparently. And our son talked to her and said, "Oh, so you do this?" "Yep." And they talked for a minute. "Great." Then I said, "Nina, how did you know that?" She said, "Easy. We covered that last week." This is in a fairly good suburban Connecticut school system, public school system. Very good school system. In what rational state or place would children in the same school system, 3 grade levels apart, be learning the exact same stuff? And the answer is in no rational system and in no rational state. And don't get smug, Chicagoans, because Illinois is no different. Virtually all of the states had the same issue. It's called, they call it spiral teaching, gave a name to it. That's not a concept of in philosophy that then they teach to it. It's just a way to describe this crap, basically. Apologize to the teachers in the audience if I'm being a little too technical. The problem came when you try to cram stuff into standards. What should a child be taught? In the 6th grade, they had 82 distinct mathematical learning elements that had to be taught during the course of a year. That means you have no more than 2 days as a teacher to introduce the concept, have the students learn it, practice it, try to help them, and then you've got to move on. It led thousands, if not millions, of teachers to say, "Look, man, I did my best. We'll just move on, and next year the other teacher will pick it up, and they'll get it." That's not bad teaching. That's the system we gave them. So the result is this. Again, this is data's a couple years old. But you look, our kids in the 4th grade in math were in about the 2nd quartile. By the 8th grade, they dropped clearly into the 3rd. And by the 12th grade, they're basically in the bottom quartile, relative to the highest performing countries. In science, our 4th graders were at the top of the game in science. They eventually dropped down into the 2nd quartile on the border of 4th by the 12th grade. But science is a Pyrrhic victory because no other country teaches science in the 4th grade, which means our kids could kick the crap out of somebody who knew nothing. In the words of Dean Wormer from Animal House, fat, ignorant, and stupid is no way to go through life. So the challenge here for us is, how do you correct this? How do you do it? Here's a page that, just so you know, that's not just one state. This is all the ones we could fit on one page. So scattered, so scattered. And the way many standards came about is the combination of things from different states and constituents, so it looked like the federal omnibus budget. Not a good way to do things. So let me talk about Common Core for a second and the standards. Simple way to look at this is, I'm a business person for 35 years. When we make jet engines, and GE does, I flew here, let's see, I've had 3 plane flights in the last 24 hours. Every one of them on a small regional jet, every one of them, thankfully, powered by a GE jet engine. We make or install about half of the jet engines in the United States operating are GE jet engines. They're really cool, made in either Cincinnati, North Carolina, or in Boston. Now, when we make a jet engine, we have a spec. What is it we're trying to make? What should it be? What are the dimensions of this thing? What are we trying to make here? Then we select materials, titanium, Inconel, all ceramics, composites, whatever, for different pieces and parts. Then we have methods and processes. How are we going to assemble it? How are we going to make this thing? And then we have quality assurance and test so that they don't fall out of the sky. In education, the specs, the definition, what is it we're trying to do here, are standards. It's that simple. What is it that we're trying to have a student know and be able to do at the end of the grade level? Curriculum is actually the materials. Materials or curriculum in the teaching setting, in the education setting, is completely locally determined. Teaching, pedagogy, methods, process, that's the magic of teaching. That's how teachers connect with 30 or 25 or whatever the number of students are in the classroom each unique, each different. How do I help that child learn and transfer knowledge to them? And then assessments at the end of year, and in the classroom, teachers do lots of quizzes and tests and stuff like that, but the assessments against the standards are one element. So let me debunk something. The Common Core standards, you should read them. Find them and read them. Go to achievethecore.org. Go find them in a number of different places. There are Illinois sites as well. They don't require, it doesn't say, in Das Kapital, Karl Marx says what? That's not in there. It doesn't prescribe all sorts of stuff. It's fundamentally things like, in the 8th grade, a student should be able to read a moderately complex text, extract 3 specific salient points or learnings, and back that up with evidence from the text. You could use an auto repair manual, you could use Romeo and Juliet, you could use the US Constitution. There are critics in the country, maybe in the room, who think the Common Core standards are either a communist Marxist federal plot or one of them not combined. Let's see. Number one, the standards were developed, funded by, adopted by, and endorsed by 2 groups, the National Governors Association and the Council for Chief State School Officers. Council for Chief State School Officers are the the Commissioner of Education in every state, and then the Governors Association are the 50 governors. They determined that their systems were not good. They all looked at it and said, look, we need to do a better job. This isn't about Illinois versus Ohio anymore. It's not about Massachusetts versus Texas. It's about US v. World. And so they ended up funding the development of standards starting in 2009. The governors placed a lot of energy and effort on this. The chief state school officers and educators reviewed this at every step of the way. The federal government had not $1 or dime involved in the creation of the standards, not a penny. The curriculum and teaching is locally determined and decided at the school district level or at the school level. There is no national curriculum. So if you see that, if you see people making that argument, inform them or tell them to go back, look at the standards. Tell me where that's a curriculum, because it's not. The testing or the assessments are a way to check, are you getting the thing that you set out to do? So as you kind of go away from this, there'll be all sorts of information. We're going to have a panel up later, and I'd be happy to entertain questions as you put them on cards and stuff. But we support this for a really simple reason, that this is an issue of competitiveness for the economy. It's that simple. If you know GE people, we seem nice, but we're actually really hardcore on accountability, on outcomes, on measurement, on all sorts of stuff. And this isn't because we like puppy dogs and cute children. This is because it's an issue of competitiveness for all of us. Anyway, I'm going to stop here, and I think we have one more speaker before we go to the panel. And I appreciate you all coming today. Thank you.